Not a grow up, it's a nursery.
We are live now, so when you're good to go, you can
Okay,
start.
thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call to order the Municipal Revitalization and Heritage Advisory Committee meeting for Monday, October 28th at 9 o'clock. Our special meeting in regards to the budget discussion update. I need a motion, correct?
Yes.
Okay, can I have that motion?
Just to be clear, a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve.
Sorry, Ashley, would you be able to do a land acknowledgement?
Oh, yes, sorry, okay. We respectfully acknowledge that the township of Cavan is located on the Treaty 20 Michi-Saugee territory and the traditional territory of the Michi-Saugee and Inuktitut. We offer our gratitude to First Nations for their care for and teachings about these lands. May we honor these teachings.
Excellent, thank you. Now we can have a motion to approve the agenda.
Correct. Now a motion to approve the agenda. Motion. Fantastic, thank you. Seconder? John, thank you. All in favor? Should pass. Great. Okay. No issues in regards to particularly interest and the general nature thereof. So we can jump right into the purpose of the meeting, the 2025 proposed budget discussion update. Good.
Okay, are we? Okay, so I can give it, sorry, we're a tag team here.
Yeah, we
are, yeah. Okay, so as you know, we met before to talk about the budget. We submitted the draft budget as per the motion of this committee. And we've had our initial discussion with Director of Finance and the CAO. So we've come back because we need to discuss in particular the proposed sign for Station Park. If you remember, we've gone from the mural project to the pylon sign. We had money in the budget. We thought we could spend it, but then Bridget can give us details of how we've arrived at this point today with our concern about that budgetary item.
Yeah, so just to kind of give you a little bit of background. So it started off when we put the $7,000 in the budget, it was a mural project. When we switched it over to a signage project, we didn't change the amount that we requested. And so now we've gone out and we've done some estimates, and we can't do a pylon sign for the amount that we have in our budget. The pylon sign, even a two-sided sign would exceed our $7,000 budget. I think we had talked about doing a four-sided pylon sign, and that was anywhere from 14,000 to like 22,000. So we're in a situation where we've got a couple of options. So we can either let the project and the money go, which I'm not sure if anybody would want to do that, but that is an option. We could put the money in a reserve for a future wayfinding project. There's a lot of initiatives that are going on, as I'm sure you're aware, with the downtown park, with the lands at the CMCC. We've got our strategic plan going. There may be an opportunity to do a signage project that is a little bit more standardized, more encompassing of the entire township, but obviously a bigger budget item. We can also, the third option would be to ask for a rollover to the 2025 budget and ask for an increase so we could complete the signage project. So this is kind of our conundrum, and it's one of our biggest items on the budget. It is our biggest item on the budget. It has been there for a long time, and it has been because it's shifted focus. So this is what we need to bring before this committee. I think that's about it, right, Karen?
Yes. Yeah, so we're here to help facilitate the discussion among the committee members about all of the options, and then.
And I would like to thank John, because John is really, really instrumental in helping me get quotes from different signage companies, which was great.
Just as an update, there were a lot of companies that we sent out requests to, we hadn't heard back from.
Mhm.
So I chased a few of them and said, hey, what's going on?
So I only have 4, so,
Did you get
well,
one?
3. I have one from, Fauna Signs, one from Regional Signs, and one from Forward Signs,
Okay.
and then I did chat with Media Works, but they didn't give me an estimate, because they can't do anything till 2025.
Right. Okay, so you got the one from Forward.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yes.
So
Yeah,
theirs was the cheapest.
yes, but they also had the installation, like the concrete foundation was,
Hi.
high.
So
Um,
I asked them if that was something that the town could do, because
mhm.
it's not a big rocket science foundation.
Yeah,
So I'm just putting that out there.
yeah, and even with that,
Yeah,
even
we're
with
over.
us, we're still.
Yeah,
Yeah, so,
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think for people who might not be aware, there is a lot of things going on with the downtown park and the CMCC.
mhm,
And so there may be through that process an opportunity that they set the the standard or the,
yeah,
what, I'm sure there's other words that
yeah,
you know, like how the sign will look so that we have that
yeah,
uniformity, I guess, throughout the township. So we may be able to piggyback on that work in the future, but
yeah, or we could ask that they delegate the authority to develop a standard to this committee.
That's-
which might be-
that's
yeah,
true,
we could
yeah.
always make that request, but
So what type of cost are we looking at if we wanted to proceed with this?
if you wanted to proceed with it, the lowest for a 4-sided sign, it was 7,425, I believe. Plus the, concrete for a 4-sided, I think was double that, was like 12,795. Yeah, yeah,
Okay, so the sign itself was sort of ballpark our budget, but it was the installation that.
yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Okay,
And then we had others that were, just a basic pylon sign, which I think it's, just very flat. Was $6,500. And then we had another one that was 4 full sign panels, 3 posts, and a complete protective roof system was, almost $15,000, 14,900.
and did that include installation?
No, installation was on top of that. So there was design time, which was about 3,900. Installation was about 1,150. The locates were, about $50, but the locates we could do internally. And then there was delivery and administration, which was a little over $500.
Okay, well, maybe what we could do is first, John, what do you think of these quotes first? that have come up? Do you think, A, they're reasonable? And then if so, then that sort of helps. If we want to consider like asking for more money.
I've worked with all these companies before, did a lot of work with Forward.
Okay,
And the thing I found with Forward was you would get one thing, but then the other part of the package sometimes was always out of whack. So you're either having to suggest that they sort of get those things more in line, or take that out of their contract and get it done by somebody else.
Okay.
I'm very happy with their workmanship. We actually won an Ontario provincial award with the sign. So they're more than capable of doing the graphic part and the sign fabrication. But they are out of Toronto, and sometimes the minute you get past Pickering, everybody
Oh.
freaks out. So, one of the options to consider would be if we somehow looked at doing foundation through another party
Okay.
and had them supply us with the sign, we'd still be over our budget, but not as near as much.
Yeah,
So that would be a smaller ask.
Okay.
yes,
So
yeah,
now that they're out of Toronto, I understand why, because they're charging for time.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what it comes down to.
And the hassle factor,
Yeah,
right? They
yeah.
just don't like having to
Okay,
travel in traffic.
yeah.
so is the installation something that the township could take, or do we need to?
We would probably need to take that to, it would most likely be either Parks or Public Works, and we would have to take it to them just to make sure that if they could identify what they can do and what they can't do, and
Okay.
then, I would imagine they could do this,
Okay.
you know, but I don't want to answer for them. Yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
Now, do you still have to carry like a cost associated with the work they're doing, or does that sort of?
Well,
just-
you'd have your materials and time, right?
Okay.
Like you'd have your staff time, which is all part of your wages, but it still would probably get charged back to the project, I would
Okay.
imagine, but
So potentially, so let's just ballpark it. We maybe need to increase, let's say the sign itself slightly, if we proceed with the project as initially proposed last time. If we increase the sign, a cost for the design itself slightly, then, and looking at that as one component, component number 2 would be installation, put a number towards that. And we just make the assumption, holding a number, we come to the township first, and then if that's not possible, then we go out, see if we could get someone else. So the reality is, okay, what would be for the sign if we upped it to, like, I'm just trying to ballpark numbers here in my book. If we say 8K for the sign, 8,000 for the sign, and what would be reasonable for the installation? A few.
Will 8K get us the 4-sided sign?
So what, sorry.
yeah.
Okay.
According to this one here,
Okay.
yeah, it says a 4-sided new non-illuminated pylon sign. Concrete foundation, but that's extra pylon sign, aluminum face, digital print graphic.
Okay.
Yeah.
So even if we went high, let's say 14K, and cut that in half for installation locally, I don't know. Say 7,000 for installation, or should we
No.
write it up to 8?
No, well, you're bumping the sign cost up to say 8.
Yeah,
So the quote here for the 2-sided signs,
no, was any of the quotes local?
no,
No, okay, so I was just thinking that we could pull off an installation cost from there. I don't know, what's a reasonable number then for installation?
Max at 3, I would think, for what we need. We either go with in-ground footing with compacted screenings, which is just a drilled hole, or we go with a poured concrete pad, and it doesn't have to be frost depth, so it's not major, it's just basically a counterweight. So I can't see that costing that much.
Oh, okay, even better. So,
But, you know, I'm not saying anything against town staff, but in a lot of times when I was working with different municipalities, it was more expensive to use town forces than it was to use a sub. But it might be different.
And another thing, if you're into your cement, the worst trouble is, cement is dear as poison. And you get into underload costs and everything else for that stuff. So I think it's best to go with bigger hole compactor, chips down in it.
When you say underload, sorry, what does that mean? That you only need a little bit of,
If you take a half load of concrete, it likely cost you for the penalty for a half load for.
Okay.
Yeah, like a wheelbarrow is gonna cost you.
yeah, that's what I thought, but I just wanted to make sure.
Unless they didn't wanna make it on site because the water's right there.
Yeah. Yeah, you can do that too, you can buy a few bags and a bit of sand.
So would, I always just round up to give a little bit of wiggle room, would like a $4,000 installation seem more?
I would be upset if we spent that much.
Okay,
it's always good to come in under budget. though.
Exactly.
Yeah, rather than to have to go back and ask for more.
okay.
Sorry, Sheriff Stewart, just to interject, Bridget, the quotes that you had for like the 4-way sign, like I had 7,400 written down here. Does that include HST?
No,
Because I would add for 7,400, this is just mental math, I would say about another $1,000 just off the top of my head, because 13%.
Okay.
So
Yeah, no,
Just trying to, if we're trying, I know we can't do it down to the dollar, but we want to try and not forget HST.
Okay, so if we say 8 and 12. It's HST, so I don't know if, I'm just thinking this through, sorry, just give me a moment. So with it, assuming the sign is about 8,000, high-end hoping installation is 4,000, that's 12,000, add your HST on that, so add another 1,000 and a bit, whatever that works out to, let's say 13 to 14,000. Would be our ask in order to proceed with the project. So now we have a number associated with that. We can have that in our brain. Do we then want to proceed with the project now knowing that there's signage, so with the downtown revitalization, right? With the
downtown park.
downtown park, yeah. So that kind of throws a wrench in it. I just want to have a number in our brain, so we have, let's just say 14,000 would be a new ask, potentially. Does it make sense to proceed now with the project though, knowing we have sort of something else that might kink or a concept of this township-wide signage initiative?
Well, in some ways, this is kind of the catalyst for future signs, right? So we're kind of being the leader to indicate to those future projects that, hey, this is kind of the direction we're heading. And I don't mind more dialogue occurring as things get fine-tuned. Of the park and what's happening at CMCC could be at least 2 years away, maybe longer, before we would see something materialize. So that's a huge time gap before we can see that put in place, right?
So knowing what's coming, and you're right, 2 years, because there's still an arena there. If we set precedent, would that precedent be followed? I guess that's my concern.
Mhm.
It's like, I'm all for this initial project, signage project, and the big concept that it initiates. I'm just worried if we do this, but then the park, I'm gonna just call it the park, goes and kind of does their own thing, and now we're back to the whole concept we had and discussions we had before. Then we have the signs that aren't matching again.
Mhm.
So I guess who sort of has a little more say, essentially? If, like, would the group that is working on that park, if they see what we've done, would they be willing to follow what we do, or do they have sort of a mission in their mind and they kind of just will go with what they're doing? I guess I'm just trying to see if it's even possible to work together.
So I don't, just to back up, like I don't know if wayfinding signage is part of one of the concepts that's coming forward. I don't know that yet.
Okay,
I suspect that there probably would be some that comes from the project. I just don't know from a conceptual design if that's what's coming forward as part of the landscape planning project that's happening right now.
okay,
I feel like if you want to see it as a standard that's developed, that's probably how it would have to be presented to council. Council is ultimately the one that would make the decision. So, what you may want to position it as an opportunity to develop a standard that could be applied to the rest of the township.
Okay.
If that makes sense. What's your thought? Karen, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think we would certainly have to, if we
Yeah.
want to go ahead of the park design, we would certainly have to position it as that we would.
We could make the recommendation.
We can make a
that
recommendation.
yeah.
Council would have to support it, but we might have to do some communications with
Yeah.
other groups within the municipality,
okay,
like Millbrook Valley Trails,
Yeah,
Parks and Recreation Department,
yeah,
to make sure that we're all
on board.
on board, and this is
Yeah.
what we come up with. This is a standard that, and even the clerk's department in terms of our, I know I'm gonna get AODA.
Mhm.
AOD standards, yeah.
Okay, those standards, that type
Yeah.
of thing, so,
Mhm.
it would require some. In addition to the actual generating the content of the sign, there's some, what's the word I'm looking for, some public
Yeah.
relations to
Yeah,
do it with our,
engagement.
yes,
Yeah.
engagement, that's the word, with
Yeah.
others
Okay.
within the municipal sphere.
Because you wouldn't want to be making this in a bubble, and I think when you take it forward to council, you want to demonstrate that you've had conversations with other organizations that would be impacted.
Okay.
But then ultimately, council would make that decision. We did say that we would bring back a design for this sign to council to approve. So it's probably in two steps, right? If you do ask for more money as part of the budget, and then we bring back the design, that's the opportunity for us to say we recommend that this be a standard that could be applied to other finding initiatives within the municipality.
Okay.
Does that? I believe.
That makes sense to me. So I guess it's just really open to discussion because.
Well, my experience working with different municipalities is they either have a wayfinding and signage program in place, which you design towards. So whether, you know, in most larger municipalities have that kind of stuff in place. I mean, Monaghan does have graphic standards, so that's a huge plus, and that's a foundation from which to build on. And when I was looking at the concept, that's what I was pulling off on as well. What's already been done, that's been approved, that we can pull from. Because I can tell you right now, the consultants working on the park and CMCC, signage is just gonna be a line item in their
Yeah.
budget. They're not gonna design that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like, when you get into working in tender drawings, if there's gonna be a sign part in that, there's usually a design that comes with it, but that's usually a separate project altogether. So it's almost like we need a subcommittee, a wayfinding and signage committee that's gonna develop a municipal-wide signage program based on a concept. And this is a catalyst for that. If we want to spend the money now, one of the options we have is we could do the foundation and get the frame for the sign put in place. And while we're waiting for the bugs to be ironed out with what's gonna happen with the signage program.
I don't think, what we said we would take back to council is a design concept for a sign.
Okay,
So that's the anticipation from council, or the expectation from council, is that we would spend those funds on a sign, not on the concrete foundation.
okay.
So, yeah, it'd be a great idea. But I think we'd run into, what we had said to council is that we would bring back a design.
Cause you know where it's gonna go, right? Council's gonna go, okay, now we're looking at a potential for a repeat. Is this what we want? So that starts another dialogue, right? Into
Yeah.
this signage and wayfinding standards.
Mhm.
Now, I probably got a terabyte of signage and wayfinding standards from municipalities all over North America
Right.
that I could easily dump in your lap and say, here are some examples. But it's from those that I kind of pulled the ideas from when I was developing the concept. So it's kind of like I homogenized everything and said, here, we can kind of like.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm kind of thinking ahead that we can certainly justify what we're doing with this sign in terms of how it can be morphed into other future signs.
Mhm. You can build upon it.
Right,
Yeah,
yeah, so there, I mean, there'd be some commonalities with the colors, with certain graphics. The sign shape might be just slightly different depending on its application, whether it's, you know, an LED message board. You're gonna approach that differently than if it was a non-illuminated pylon. But there'd be some similarity in graphic content and color, et cetera, that would be
Mhm.
the same. all
Yeah,
through.
so essentially you're kind of developing a template that they could use for their own, whatever you're
Right.
trying to sign, right?
Right.
Like whatever information you're trying to, but
I'm kind of thinking like if we already had a signage and wayfinding committee, what might that be? And sort of like kind of presumed as some ideals based on just experience. And sort of said, well, I think
mhm,
you can certainly show precedent and arguments in favor of a certain direction and why. You know, the disability standards and font sizes, that's pretty much a standard that you would follow no matter what, so I don't.
And I think to your point, like, I think this committee, it's a good initiative for this committee to lead is, so like, I do see if a wayfinding signage subcommittee is formed, it probably should be as part of this committee, because you want the level of information and experience from this committee to inform that signage project. So maybe that's what you take forward, is that to do this sign, it's more than we thought it was. So we're asking for more money to complete that, but we see this as being the catalyst to a bigger wayfinding signage project that we would like to establish a subcommittee to help that and guide other committees and other departments when they're developing signage, that there's a bit of a standardized process, that we would
Right.
develop a template. Is that kind of what you're thinking, John?
Yeah, so if
Yeah.
you, a certain building or a certain facility will get this kind of sign.
Yeah.
You do a picture, and again, I've got lots of information.
Sure,
back and
yeah.
Forward, but
Mhm.
that's
Yeah.
kind of what I thought this was gonna be a catalyst for future,
Mhm.
so.
Yeah, so with that, then when we ask for our existing budget to be put in the reserve, which was one of your options,
Mhm.
and that in the interim, then we have the subcommittee, we develop the templates, we get buy-in from others and from council, and then in the background, we can still be working on the content of our sign,
Yeah,
and then.
yeah, because then the conversation would be, can we pull out some from that reserve to complete that one sign? Is that kind of your thought, Karen?
Yes, or maybe we even come back and with an ask for more money for 2026 to complete that sign,
Yeah.
if that's where we end up.
First of all, I think you want to find out for sure exactly where they want to put the sign, because I hear rumors that they want it in this new park downtown where they tear down the arena. So that could make a difference on your sign, whether, where were you gonna put it, John?
Right where the
Station
old
park.
railway used to be, the railway station by the,
That's what I thought, that's what
Yeah.
was going up there.
Yeah.
But I did hear a little bit of a rumor that they want everything to go to the park downtown, so maybe we should do like Karen said, put the money in the reserve until they decide exactly where they want it to go.
well, I'll just make it publicly known, I would disagree with that, because this. Part of the wayfinding program is to pick certain spots within the municipality that you wanna highlight. And if the railway station's there and the mural's all about the railway station, it needs to be where the railway station was.
I gotta agree
Right,
with you there, I gotta agree with
And
you there. but you
we're
don't always
inundated
get
with
stuff we
rumors
want.
all over the place about what's happening,
Yeah,
and
so I think, seeing as we're not coming in at cost. My opinion would be to put the money in the reserve and hang on to it until we get to exactly where we're gonna go and what we're gonna use for a sign. Cause I think we start asking for more money. We gotta tighten up on some budgets around here, so. Put the money in reserve, find out where you wanna put the sign, and where you get the okay to put the sign is two different things.
Well, I think council has already approved the concept of a sign at the.
At Station
Yeah.
Park.
Yes.
I think so.
The council has already,
Yeah,
Because
I
we've
must have missed
been,
that meeting, man.
because they've approved this train budget, train station mural previous, like this is an ongoing budget item. So this has been in the works, what, 3 years now? It's just we've modified it from a mural now
To a
to
sign.
signage.
Yeah.
So it's already been approved, had we just moved forward with a mural 2 years ago, something would be there already.
yeah,
It's just we modified it based on thinking at a larger scale and implication for the township wide.
Yeah.
So I don't think location is an issue. They've already approved that. If they go back on that, then there's bigger issues at hand.
But that was 3 years ago, they approved that, and now they're getting more push towards the park downtown for stuff.
yeah,
no,
but
the one that you took forward on the 12th of August, it was a standalone sign for Station Park Signage Project. So and she did reference that the location was the same, it's just that the nature of the signage, it went from a mural to a signage project. So it's like, I don't I'm sure there's probably gonna be more signs. And I would imagine probably as part of that downtown park, I don't know for sure. But I imagine, I think it's reasonable to think this would be one of others that will come around. I don't think it's an either or. But the location has been approved a couple of times, I would say.
Yes.
Like a year ago when we just wanted, or when they discussed doing the mural, and then when Karen brought it forward in August, it was shifting it from a mural to a sign, but the location was Station Park.
But having said that, I think we do have to be aware that going back for more council approval, it does open the door, right? They can say yes.
Change your mind.
They could change their mind and say,
Yeah,
okay,
for
yeah,
sure.
we'll get, we'll agree to the reserve with this, location, we'll agree to the reserve, we want change location. We don't agree to the reserve, like they can,
Because the conversation has.
it is a
changed,
council
yeah.
decision,
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
So I think when you as a chair go to the budget meeting, we can certainly help you hit the points of what we would like to ask for, and then council will make a decision.
Okay. So the consensus, at least what I'm getting is that we are, I think, leaning towards putting the budget item in a reserve. That sort of what I'm thinking. Yeah,
From my point, I would think you better put it in reserve and start up asking for more money because budget time, we gotta tighten up on some stuff here.
Okay, so obviously we're gonna vote, but, I guess we sort of just have to sort of decide what that motion would be to vote on.
Yeah, so I kind of had to do some things on my fly. So my understanding is, first of all, we have unspent money from 2024 that we want to put into a reserve and create a reserve fund specifically for this project. So I'm gonna do a little bit of a modification of what I had a draft written up. So basically, I'll read it out, but I just want to give you the Coles notes. So first of all, the committee is going to withdraw its previous 2025 operating budget request, and then it's going to put forward a new operating budget request, and it's going to include all the items that we mentioned at the last meeting, except we're going to change the wayfinding signage project. That's the term that I have for it. And it's going to be that there's going to be a reserve fund created for the wayfinding signage project. And then we're going to request that the 2024 budgeted amount get put into that reserve. And we're going to ask for, I don't want to do you want to ask for the same amount that was budgeted in 2024? And that would make it a $14,000 reserve. How much, that's the thing the committee, I shouldn't even put a number out there, but how much the committee wants to ask as a reserve fund. If the reserve gets spent in 2025, then it's just gonna be a short term, but usually reserve is, you top it up every so much every year. And if this is an ongoing project, that's for the committee to decide. If this is not a one-off, that could be something you could do, just be topped up every year by a certain amount, or yeah. That's the only thing I would need to know is how much goes into reserve.
So just a clarification, so the signage project is a capital item, it's
Yes.
not part of
Oh,
operating,
yeah,
okay?
sorry.
So, okay, so we've got the operating
Yes.
budget, which
Yeah, okay.
we're moving forward with. I don't think we need to discuss that, it's just the capital budget for this one item, so.
So being on the Historical Society, there is an option I could ask, being on the board, if we wanted to donate some money towards that.
You would still have to get approval from council. If they're doing so are they doing a signage project? Is that
No.
kind of?
I'm just saying that they might be interested in contributing to the cost,
Oh, so they might donate to us?
Right.
Oh, okay, sorry, I thought meant
specifically for
to.
that, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah, add to your,
Like I just heard a rumor from somebody that there's money that's been bequeathed that could pay for this whole sign,
oh, okay.
but I don't know if they would want to say, we're gonna take all this and give it away, right? But it is an option.
If I can chime in here, I would suggest no donations is certainty right now, and the year itself, if we're going through the thing, we should make it a capital budget item request. And there bunch of the complexities that come with making donations with funding the project. So I would advise the committee that we stick with this being a budgetary request for now.
Yeah, and I think if it's going into a reserve, it would be the amount that's actually in the capital budget that would be transferred to the reserve.
Mhm.
Yeah, we would just ask for a
Yeah.
rollover, right? Of
Yeah.
our,
Yeah.
of our existing,
Yeah.
you know,
A rollover and then a new 70,000 for 2025 for the capital
No,
budget. No,
no.
sorry, am I
No.
misunderstanding?
yeah, I think what we're hearing from Councillor Edgerton is that
Okay,
budget is tight,
Mhm.
so we want to protect what we already have,
Okay,
and when we have our ducks in a row, so to speak, with our wayfinding protocols,
Mhm.
signage protocols, and the content, then we can see if we can proceed, or then we'll ask for more money at that point in time.
okay.
So is the motion then, sorry,
No,
and I
that's
don't mean
fine.
to, but is the
Yeah.
motion then that we ask that a reserve be set up and that those funds be transferred to a reserve? And that we establish a subcommittee for wayfinding, a broader wayfinding signage project? Do we put that in so that that goes forward as?
just to clarify, technically, we already created a subcommittee for the Wayne signing project. Is this a small committee? I believe is just John and staff. We're working together unless you would, I don't know if you guys originally thought of your meeting as a subcommittee, but that's essentially what
I guess
it was.
I didn't
I
think,
think we thought it was a mural committee,
yeah,
not a signage.
I think if we put the money in the reserve, the
Yeah.
reserve project, and then Sandy Claus comes along with a bucket of money, that goes into that reserve, because being in the fire chief business and that for years, we had some projects, we just had to keep money in reserve, keep adding a little bit to it, going along, because like air pack was one thing, you couldn't afford to buy them all 1 year.
Yeah.
And further to what you just said, we talked about this way back when, that this might be a constant line item that
Yeah.
we go to council for. So we're just gonna basically take the money that we have now, put it in the pot, and if we get the full 7 from council for next year, we'll have enough to do the sign.
Yeah, that might be next year, you get part of it, it might be the following year, you get the rest of it. Like, it's a project that has to be ongoing, so if you put money aside to start it, then you can keep asking for money to put into it until you get enough to finalize the project.
Right, they'll come down with me.
So-
It's a big item here.
So rolling over the 7,000, I guess this was just my other thought. I know we have our subcommittee. Can you have a subcommittee on our committee, but then pull in other people from other committees? Like, if we're trying to do a bigger initiative, you probably would want trails involved. Would you want the BIA involved? Like,
That's a clerk question.
Yes, that is a clear question. So there's a couple of things, like you could have a joint committee hypothetically, but I think for the scope of this project, what you would do is we would have it in the design phase, this subcommittee would have something. And then let's say for AODA standards, we don't have an accessibility advisory committee now, but we'd bring them in and ask them to kind of give their eyes to the project and
Okay.
give advice like, does it follow the clear print guidelines? Is there anything for people that are visually impaired, or I don't think mobility it would be an issue. So that would be something that we do. Same with MVT, Millbrook Valley Trails. If there was anything involving the trails, I don't think this project would be. So as far as I know, so I think we'd be fine.
but so are you saying, just so I'm clear,
I don't
that
think
we could do the work,
Yeah.
come up with a concept or some standards, and then we could do a dog and pony show, and we could get on the agenda for Millbrook Valley Trails,
Yeah.
we could go to the BIA.
perfect.
Yeah.
And make a
totally.
presentation
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
let them have input, and then
Mhm.
before we go to council, have their input, do
Yeah.
any tweaks, and then make the
Yeah.
pitch.
basically let them play their roles advisory committees. I don't think we need a special joint committee meeting or anything like that. So
I just wanted to make sure that we proceed and it still be our project, but then we don't sort of burn bridges with other people who feel left out, that they didn't have like they
Yeah.
weren't involved in the design process or something like that. But it's, I guess, just from a diplomatic standpoint, if we sort of just take the ball, roll with it, then like Karen was saying, get on their agenda, this is what we're doing. You know,
Yeah.
here's
Right.
a larger initiative we'd like you to be a part of. If you need a sign, like, come chat with us. We have a template now.
Yeah.
Okay,
No, that sounds good. Good stakeholder consultation is important, so.
Okay.
Yeah, I think if you, as Karen was saying, distribute to all the various people and say, look, this is what we're considering.
Yeah.
And why, here's where we've come from, here's all the various things that are influencing what we've come up with. Do you have any comments? And if we do our homework, it'd be more just, as you said, transparency, and everybody's going, oh, that was great, yeah.
and then the only other thing that's went through my head right now is rolling this over. I think that's where we're leaning. However, does anyone see any costs associated with actually doing our implementation of development of this, let's just call it template of this signage? Like, I know we always had the money associated with the execution of the actual signage itself, but do you see any costs associated potentially with the initiative to create what we want to create? And I wonder if we have to possibly say we're revising what we're submitting to council. Do we have to revise how we present it to council? That maybe the rollover is not only just for the sign, or potentially for some of the sign, and a little bit of like cost associated. Like, do we have to reach out to a consultant or something? I'm just trying to think, if we're here now discussing, let's just think through everything we have to make
Well, you have
sure.
your consultant right here.
Okay, I
That's a
just want to make
start.
sure.
The only thing I can see is, if I'm donating time, and if we get into some potential high-end graphics,
Okay,
we may either, I don't know if anybody in the town familiar with Illustrator or Photoshop.
Like I know the program, I don't use it.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I can make it work, but in terms of if we wanted to really get something smashing, and we could probably print in-house, but we might need somebody to look at doing some of the computer stuff.
Yeah, I think the design component, I think our skill set internally, it would be beyond our skill set. So I think you would want to go externally for design concept.
Well, I can do that part of it, and I can even when we did with the original concepts that we presented to this committee, I was able to wing it, cutting and pasting enough that you can fine tune it. And if we wanted to have, at the end of the day, a binder with signage and wayfinding guidelines, that's where I would say I don't have that much time.
Yeah, no.
and that's exactly where I was
That's
going.
what
Like,
you're
you can
talking
only
about.
do so much on your plate. It was just like, I'm almost thinking of the bylaws, like the heritage bylaws, like there was a volunteer aspect, there was only so much staff could do, there was only so much us as a committee, myself could do. We ended up having to have someone come in to do some of the work. So that job, that's exactly what I'm thinking. Do we need to just manipulate our words slightly in our intent, that maybe that rollover 7,000 is some holding for the project, and we can ask for more once we get there, but some consultant fees, essentially, whatever that eventually encompasses. Maybe it is just like a graphic designer or
Right.
someone putting that binder together
Yeah.
for you, because I know that is going to take time.
Could it be a student?
Sure.
Like could
100%.
that be a,
I can work with a student, no problems, and produce a full package.
is that? We do have I know we have that student position dedicated to the.
So we asked for
cultural-
it, this is why I'm looking. So
Yeah.
I need to get to Kimberly because it's under operating, there's nothing. And that's not what we asked for, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you want to just talk about the student component? Because we
Yeah, so there
have
was,
Connor's,
we had leftover funding from when Connor was here to develop the bylaws.
Connor
And
was
so
the one
that's-
that, yeah.
And that's been held, so, excuse me, so I had some discussion with the director of finance about using that money to hire a summer student to assist, excuse me, with some of the remaining bylaw information to assist with our ongoing efforts with the Historical Society about the cultural heritage mapping and to do other projects
Directed.
as directed, right?
Okay.
And so it was our intention to use that leftover funding. We can also apply for a grant to get some subsidize of the wages. And so that's, if we're successful, we can, that's an option for us.
So I think though, we would be talking about two different skill sets though, right? You'd be talking about one that has the ability to research and do the cultural heritage component.
Mhm.
I think if we were looking at somebody to do like a binder of policy signage, that would be a graphic art student. Is that fair?
I have probably enough stuff that we could just basically hand it, and if they can manipulate information digitally. I don't know if you need a graphics person to do that or not.
Okay.
And if that student has a handle of graphic programs and we've given them enough information that they can deal with it, you might be able to.
So we could kind of broaden the scope of
Yeah.
the position.
We
Because
could,
I think
we could broaden, not that I want to open the operating budget. We could ask for contracted services that we could just hire someone, like. We could amend our ask to include a line item for contracted services that, whether we need $1,000, 2,000, I don't know what the number is. To engage that person separate, like.
Is that realistic? Like, do you think council would go for that?
Well, I was almost thinking like instead of opening what we already have established, when we roll this $7,000 over, can we change it to, like, instead of that money being earmarked for the sign itself, perhaps the rollover is the intent of like getting like getting our hands dirty type of concept, like maybe it is for some of the sign, or maybe it is for like some of that would just be hiring someone to do like putting the binder together. I don't know if that's even possible. Is that allowed?
Some of what you're sounding like, if you're talking about a summer student or some like contractor, that might be coming from that might be an operating budget. I'm not the treasurer, so I want to get that qualified.
Okay.
But this is the rollover is coming from the capital budget, so I don't think you can do that, but
Okay.
don't hold me to that. I'd be wary of, I think the reserve fund idea is probably the best path forward, especially while we're uncertain exactly on the final design
Okay.
location, and there's some uncertainty exactly about what the downtown park design is going to look like right now. So that from a budgeting perspective, I feel like the rollover item is being as proposed, and not to try and make some capital and
Gotcha.
operating.
Okay.
It's possible we could expand the scope of the summer student to be a little bit beyond the cultural mapping project. I think there is some overlap in the skills in the sense that you probably need somebody with some digital literacy, because for cultural mapping, I imagine you need some knowledge of GIS software or some sort of digital mapping element.
So Peterborough County does that part for us,
Okay.
so, I'll have that.
Karen's correct, so it's fine. But yes, I would say don't mix the two items, just
Okay.
keep the
Okay.
capital rollover in a reserve fund.
Okay, so the 7,000 is what it is. We just roll it over. Okay, so then it's, I guess, just modifying.
You didn't go over the $7,000 into the signing project, that leaves it open. It doesn't need specifically whether you can hire a student to do something or not. You gotta leave bag open, like just roll it over into that project.
Chair Stewart, just I want to clarify one thing. So before Cindy was text messaging me this, just to clarify something. Before we bring anything, the final design of the project, to other committees to kind of give their advice on, if they do need to consult, we would need to bring a report to council first. That's just a procedural thing. I just want to clarify the committee on. Sorry about that.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we need to take the report to council saying, here's what we're
Yes.
proposing
Mhm.
before we get
Mhm.
input from committees.
Yes. Cindy was clarifying.
But isn't that
So I'd feel like we'd have to do it twice then, is that, so we would bring forward our proposed that we're taking to as part of our engagement strategy to the other committees. And then we would get their input and then bring it back to council, is that?
So we're
That-
Then
proposing
you
what,
saying
we're
defer to
proposing what we're
you,
proposing.
Karen, on this, so if you have a different thought, then.
I just don't want to go to council without any input from the committees,
Hmm.
you know, so maybe it's
I think we not just very simple here today, we're trying to decide whether we're gonna ask for more money or just put $7,000 in the reserve.
that's the main question for today,
Yeah,
yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't wanna get distracted on the process based stuff. We can figure out the right approach for this, after the meeting itself, from a
Okay.
procedural perspective.
okay. In that regard, then, are we ready to make a motion?
So I'm gonna try, doing the short form version of this, since we're not touching the operating budget whatsoever.
Okay,
I'm gonna say, I'm gonna do this on the fly, excuse me, and I have some notes.
That's okay.
But that the Municipal Revitalization and Heritage Advisory Committee's 2025 capital budget request be revised, and that the committee create a reserve fund for the wayfinding signage project. And that the committee requests that the unspent money from the 2024 capital project be put into the reserve fund for the wayfinding signage project. And that there be no further capital budget requests for the 2025 capital budget. Does that sound about accurate? I don't think we need a separate motion to revise the scope of the project, because we already have the subcommittee and you can work on the design before there's a final report to council.
Or are we wanting the money from the budget that we needed to spend by the end of this year rolled over? And asking for an additional 7?
Oh, we're just gonna roll it back into, what do you call
Reserve.
that? Reserve, yeah, in the reserve.
So we're asking at this point for no more money for,
We're just gonna put the $7,000 over into reserve and onto it. And then later on, we finally need X amount of dollars to carry on, we can after that next year or the next year, whenever it comes up.
so the reality of the situation is we're rolling over $7,000 for 2025. 2025 then could be our year of developing the template, coordination with all the other committees, taking the signage wayfinding template to council, getting that approved, then hopefully getting their approval, and then at the end of 2025, going into 2026, asking for a lump sum to proceed with what we have quoted. Does that make sense? So I guess essentially everything's being pushed a year.
I think we have to be careful what we put on this year reserve thing. For tails here, we just wanna step it over now, and then later on. you can
Yeah,
say-
that's what I'm saying. I'm just
Before it
thinking,
becomes
I'm just sort of
after that.
proposing a schedule for the
Yeah.
initiative that John has proposed. Because I think John and I work very similar. We're very, well, being in the private field, you get things done quickly, but the reality
I want
is
this
things
up next year.
Yeah,
so can we ask?
I think you wanted it up this fall.
I did.
Because we discussed cold construction, so, rolling over, as I said, rolling over the $7,000 will give us that pot for 2025. It is there at least that we could potentially utilize. If not for construction itself, then essentially next fall, we would be having to ask for the remainder to proceed with construction in then that'd be 2026. Yes.
So we have, yeah.
So hence why we're having this discussion
Right.
today.
Put the $7,000 into reserve without any tails hooked onto it at all, what we might do.
Yeah.
That can come to.
So yeah, that's what it came down to. We either roll it over, and that's our proposed schedule essentially,
Right,
because we won't have another ask until fall of 2025.
right. So we can't amend the budget by asking for another 7 for next year.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Or
You can,
or
you
or
can go to
today-
council and ask for more money.
Or today, we ask for 13 or 14,000, we amend it, instead of rolling over, we say, no, we're gonna double it. Because we wanna build this next year.
But you could get turned down pretty quick.
Yes,
Mhm.
but you can
I
get
think
turned
you
down
could.
for a number of things.
So that might be your ask, is you want more money, and if we don't get it, then we'll roll it over.
Well, I don't, are you gonna have that option, though, John, if you ask for money, you get it turned down, are you gonna have that option to roll that over then, or you ask for that option now?
There's
And
two,
ask for the money later.
there are two things that the committee can do. I think we're uniform in that we want to create the reserve fund, basically, and there's gonna be the 7,000, we're requesting the 7,000 be put into the thing. And then if the committee, and this is what the committee can decide, but this is what's going on right now, we could ask for another 7,000 for the 2025 capital budget to be put in it. And if the committee decides that's the thing, then council will decide whether they approve that ask or not, basically. So
Okay.
you would still have.
I would suggest if
Reserve
we are gonna ask for more money, we're not creating a reserve, because if
Okay.
we're asking for
Okay.
more money, that means we're going,
Okay.
right? That we're gonna design and we're gonna
Careful,
go.
Then you could lose it all.
I totally understand
Yeah.
that.
Is
So
that how, what it comes down to? You ask, and if they say no, you lose it, it's all gone?
You could.
They could.
I think
You
there's
could. not-
there's any realm of possibility, right?
Yeah.
You could get what you asked for, you could get nothing,
Right,
or you could get somewhere in between.
so if we go.
So as the chair of the committee has to go and make the case of why we need this money and how it's, so I would suggest to you that if you pass a motion to ask for more money, we as a committee have to be prepared to move this along. And it has to be done next year. So that means more work for all of us. Like, let's be clear.
Yeah.
If in fact we go and ask for more money and we're lucky enough to get it, and if we don't spend it, it'll be over.
Yeah.
It'll be over.
I think you're better off to get your reserve than have to add money to reserve, and like John mentioned earlier on, maybe somebody else might wanna contribute a little bit into that, some other committees or something.
Well,
Into that cookie jar.
we are part of the revitalization committee, and if we got a downtown market square and park and CMCC being developed, if we're sort of pulling that, right? And we're, part of that forward thinking is this wayfinding program. We're kind of saying to council, we've got a sign that we've already started. We don't have enough. And next year we're asking for more money, but it's gonna be, part of that ask is gonna include what's gonna be happening when all these other projects come online. We'll already have our signage program in place. That would sweeten the pot, right?
Yeah. I think right off the bat, I think you gotta get your reserve pot started, then you can always add to it.
Not necessarily. I think what it needs to come down to is a decision on how much energy people have next year, essentially. Like, is the reality that we can come up with a template for signage and initiate a first project, shouldn't say initiate, execute a next project in the calendar year of 2025. If not, if that's not feasible, then I think a rollover makes more sense.
Okay, at this point, we have a concept in place.
Yeah,
I think all we need to do is backtrack
Okay,
with the groups
Establish.
involved in saying, okay, we move fast, maybe a little too fast. We want to backtrack a bit and say, okay, we want to develop a wayfinding and signage program for the community at large.
Yeah.
And we're gonna develop this, and oh, lo and behold, our first shot coming out of the hoop with this new signage program is this sign, right?
Yeah.
Then everybody's happy.
I think a lot of the work has already been sort of started
Yes.
in developing the concept for this particular one. The question is that the standard we want to put forward for the rest of the community? And I don't think it's just, I don't think we tried to move too fast. I think it's just things have changed as we've moved forward with the project, right? So the concept has changed, the committee has changed, the community has changed, right? The community has grown. There's other assets that are, so I think we're basically trying to say, okay, well, let's take this project, but let's not have it be in isolation. Let's let it be part of a
Right.
broader scope. So in which case we need more money to actually do the implementation of that particular sign, but we are proposing that we develop a concept that can be applied to the rest of the township. I think the actual execution of one sign, I think, is realistic.
Oh, totally.
And I think even developing, because we've already got the base for the like a standardized concept.
Yep.
So I do think it is realistic
Yeah.
for 2025.
Definitely.
Yeah, if you
Yeah.
feel confident with
Oh,
the schedule,
no
because
problem. No problem.
you're on that subcommittee and I
Yeah.
sort of look to you for this initiative, then
My biggest problem would be that, yeah, it's the process, because with 40+ years experience, I've done this, so I can just say here. Cause I would apply all that experience into it, but like any legal argument, where's your precedence? Where's your case studies? So back it up. And I think that's for the benefit of other committees and everybody for that matter, is back it up. Show the process that we're going through to establish the standards. So everybody understands where we're coming from and we're not jumping ahead of any protocols or processes. So,
okay, so then, does everybody, like, we're obviously gonna vote, but I think it sounds like we actually might be modifying.
So,
Our motion?
yes, my understanding is we're not gonna, this is ultimately where the committee members, I can give a motion describing what you want to do, but my understanding is at least, I don't want to put on you, John or Ashley, but it sounds like you want to put forward a motion basically to propose that there be a rollover of the 2024 capital project funds and an additional $7,000 for the 2025 capital budget for a wayfinding signage project to go through. And this is, I have the reserve fund one, if the member wants to put that through, I can reread that, but basically, can I read out a sample motion right now?
Yes, please.
That the Municipal Revitalization and Heritage Advisory Committee requests a revised 2025 capital budget. That budget includes a rollover of the 2024 capital budget funds for the wayfinding signing project, and then an additional $27,000 be requested for the 2025 capital budget for the wayfinding signage project. Does that sound
I think that
correct?
sounds fair.
And
Then
is
we-
14 gonna be enough?
Yeah,
I think so.
I think so,
It
yeah.
sounded like that was the
Okay,
figure that you were
okay,
going on, but if you want to
okay.
revise the
And
figure,
it's actually
Yeah.
called the Station Park sign.
the station part, sorry.
That's what's on the list here, so.
So if we're saying 14, I'll just go back to my numbers here. We're rounding it up, assume $8,000 for the sign itself. And then we assumed 4,000 for installation, taxes, fees, et cetera, et cetera. So that gave you anywhere from, well, 8 and 4 is 12. Add some extra wiggle room in there, HST, you're looking at 13, 14, so go with 14.
Yeah, go
Yeah.
for 14.
Mhm.
So it's an additional $7,000 for the 2025 capital budget. So do you want me to reread the motion, or do you want to just vote on the motion modified for station lighting project?
I just want to be clear that we're all, like, it's all described the same.
Sorry, that's the
Yeah.
term. No, that's good.
I think, I feel okay just asking for a motion.
Yeah.
And then this is the time everyone votes, and that's why you vote against or for, so, okay.
So do you want me to read it out again, or do you just want to go ahead with the mover?
Sure, we'll read it out and
Okay.
then we'll make it very.
All right, so that the Municipal Revitalization and Heritage Advisory Committee revise its 2025 capital budget request, that it requests a rollover of the 2024 capital budget item funds for the station signage project of $7,000, and that it requests an additional $7,000 from the 2025 capital budget for the station signage project.
Okay, all in favor?
Sorry, can we
Oh,
have a
sorry.
mover and seconder
Oh, sorry.
first?
Can I have sorry, I need a.
Mover and a
mover?
seconder.
Yes.
I'll move it.
Thank you, Deborah. A seconder,
I'll second.
John, all in favor? Okay, so we have 3, 1, 2, 3,
I have
4. And all against? We have 1.
Yeah.
Okay, motion,
I void my
That is-
opinion.
I could say
I
motion
got my
passed.
own
Yeah,
back.
it's carried.
Okay,
All right. With that done, we don't have any other additional items, so we just need a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Cheers through.
motion to adjourn.
thank you, John. Do I have a seconder? Deborah, thank you. All in favor? Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Excellent, hold on, I'm stopping the stream. Don't say anything to